I want to start with where I was when I found out. I was on the floor of a hospital corridor. Not sitting on the floor, my back against the wall outside the pediatric intensive care unit. Because I had walked out of my daughter's room because the machine sounds were too loud and my chest was too full, and I needed 30 seconds of a different kind of air before I went back in. My daughter's name is Imani. She was 7 years old and she was on a ventilator because a car had run a red light on a Tuesday afternoon and she had been in the crosswalk walking home from school. My name is Nadia. I am 38 years old. I had been married to Warren for 11 years. The hospital social worker had come to me that morning with paperwork that I did not fully understand, but that contained a number, $5,000. That represented a gap in our insurance coverage for a specific component of Imani's treatment protocol. $5,000. The number sat in my chest like a stone. I had called Warren at 10:47 a.m. He did not answer. I called again at 11:15. He did not answer. I texted, Imani needs $5,000 for treatment. Please call me. He did not call. At 2:30 p.m., my best friend Della arrived at the hospital. She had been there every day since the accident, but she was early today, and when I looked at her face I understood that she had come with something specific. She sat beside me on the floor. I need to show you something, she said. And I need you to be ready. She handed me her phone. On the screen, a photograph. A rooftop. Balloons. A woman I recognized, Simone, Warren's assistant, who I had always known about and always pretended I didn't. A cake. A crowd of people. And in the center of the photograph, Warren, in a suit I had never seen, with his arm around Simone, laughing. The caption on the photograph, the most magical birthday she's ever had. My queen deserves the world. The date on the photograph was yesterday, while I was on the floor of a hospital corridor. I looked at the photograph for a long time. Then I asked Della for my phone. Before I tell you what I did, I need to tell you who Warren Elias Cole was, because the full picture is the only picture worth telling. Warren was 41 years old. He ran a logistics company that he had built from a small operation into something with 40 employees and 3 distribution contracts with regional retailers. He was, in the industry he operated in, respected. He was, in the community we lived in, considered successful. He drove a car that communicated success. He wore clothes that communicated success. He gave the specific impression of a man who had made it and who understood exactly how to maintain that impression. Inside our marriage, he was different. Not violent, I want to say that clearly. Warren's damage was financial and emotional and specifically targeted toward making me feel that what we had was his, and that my access to it was a function of his generosity rather than my 11 years of contribution to it. I had been a pediatric nurse before Imani was born. I had worked for 8 years, built a professional reputation, contributed to our household income consistently. When Imani came, we decided together, or I believed we decided together, that I would step back to part-time to be more present for her early years. What I had not understood until much later was that stepping back from full-time work had also stepped back my financial independence in ways that Warren had quietly leveraged. The joint accounts I had access to were never quite full enough to feel secure. The decisions about large purchases went through Warren. My requests for household budget increases were met with the specific sighing patience of a man who considered his wife's financial management a minor inconvenience to his own. Simone Adair was 29 years old. She had been Warren's assistant for 3 years. I had met her at a company Christmas party and had experienced, in a handshake and a smile, the specific information that she was more than she was introduced as. I had not confronted Warren. I had been managing Imani and the household and the specific exhaustion of a marriage that required me to be smaller than I was. And then Imani was in the crosswalk on a Tuesday afternoon. And Warren spent $150,000 on a rooftop birthday party. Are you enjoying the story so far? I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next, because trust me, there's a lot more story to be told. Without wasting much time, let's continue. Della Patterson was 40 years old, my closest friend since we were 22. A woman who had spent her career as a social worker and who had developed the specific no-nonsense clarity of someone who has watched people make choices that destroy their own lives and has stopped softening the description of what she sees. She had been telling me for 2 years that something was wrong with Warren's finances. Not in those words, in the words of a woman who knows how to name things carefully. She had said, "The way he talks about money in your house sounds like it's only his money." She had said, "Does he know what's in the joint account right now?" She had said, once, 11 months ago, "Nadia, what would you do if you needed $5,000 and he wasn't available?" I had laughed it off, because laughing it off was easier than the alternative. Now she was sitting beside me on a hospital floor. "How did you get this?" I said, looking at the photograph on her phone. "Simone's friend posted it publicly," she said. "Tagged the venue, tagged the event. It has a price estimate in the caption from someone who was invited. The venue alone was $40,000. She paused. "There are 23 photographs in total. 23 photographs of a party. Of balloons and champagne and a crowd of people and Warren in his new suit, while his daughter was on a ventilator. He has money," I said. It was not a question. It was a realization arriving with the specific weight of something you already knew and had not fully let yourself know. "He has money," Della said. I thought about the $5,000. The stone in my chest. "The joint account," I said. "What's in it?" Della looked at me steadily. "You're going to need to check that yourself," she said. "But I want you to do it before you call him. And I want you to call someone else first." "Who?" I said. She handed me a card. A name. A phone number. An attorney. "Her name is Constance," she said. "She's been expecting your call for 6 months. I gave her your name 6 months ago. I told her I thought you'd need her eventually." I looked at the card. "You were ready for this," I said. "I was ready for you," she said. "There's a difference. I checked the joint account before I called anyone. The balance was $412. I sat with that number for a long time. $412 in the account that was supposed to cover our household expenses, in Monty's after-school activities, the groceries, the utilities. The account that I had believed held several $1,000s because that is what I had been told, in the vague way of a man who manages information as a form of control. $412. I then did something I had not done in 11 years of marriage. I looked at the account transaction history for the previous 90 days. What I found reorganized my understanding of the last 3 years. Consistent transfers out. Not to bills, to an account I did not recognize. Regular amounts, between $2,000 and $8,000, occurring twice monthly, for as far back as I could see in the transaction records. I totaled the transfers for the 90 days visible to me. $87,000. In 90 days. From our joint account to an account I did not recognize. I understood what I was looking at. I was looking at 3 years of systematic financial transfer from our shared resources to a parallel life Warren had been building. I called Constance Webb. Constance Webb was 53 years old, a family law attorney with 27 years of practice, recommended by Della, and the first person who had answered a phone that day who seemed entirely unsurprised by what I told her. I told her everything. The accident. Imani. The $5,000. Warren's non-response. The photograph. The party. The joint account balance. The transfers. She listened for 22 minutes without interrupting. When I finished, she said, "Mrs. Cole, I want to ask you one question." "Please," I said. "Are you calling me because you want advice," she said, "or because you are ready to act?" I looked at the door of Imani's room. Through the small window, I could see the machines. I could see my 7-year-old daughter. "I am ready to act," I said. "Good," she said. "Here is what we are going to do." Constance Webb had the specific bearing of a woman who has spent 27 years watching financially controlling husbands discover that the law does not share their understanding of whose money it is. She was compact, upright, with close-cropped silver natural hair and reading glasses she used with the efficiency of someone who does not waste movements. She had agreed to meet me at the hospital the following morning, not her office, the hospital, because I was not leaving Imani. She arrived with a leather briefcase and a paralegal named Jerome and the specific organized calm of a woman who has been in rooms like this before. She sat across from me in a family consultation room the hospital had made available. The transfers, she said. You have screenshots? Of everything I could see in the account, I said. The balance at time of the medical financial request? $412, I said. I have the screenshot. And the photograph of the party and the public caption referencing the event's cost? Della has everything, I said. She's been collecting documentation for 6 months. Constance looked at me with the specific expression of a woman who has just understood the full shape of what she has been handed. Your friend has been collecting documentation for 6 months, she said. Yes, I said. While you were unaware. She did it because she was afraid I'd need it, I said. She was right. People like Della, Constance said, make my job significantly more straightforward. She opened her briefcase. Here is what I am filing today. An emergency motion for financial disclosure, citing evidence of deliberate concealment of marital assets. A motion for immediate temporary support, citing Imani's medical needs and the documented inadequacy of the available joint funds. And a formal complaint to the family court regarding the misappropriation of marital assets to fund a non-marital relationship. Will that work? I said. The party was documented publicly with a cost estimate, she said. The transfers are in the account records you have access to. The timing, the party the day before the medical funding request went unanswered, establishes a pattern that a family court will find extremely relevant. She looked at me. Mrs. Cole, she said. This man spent $150,000 on a birthday party while his daughter was on life support. Courts have feelings about that. He came to the hospital at 6:17 p.m. on the day I called Constance. I know the time because I was watching the door. He was still wearing the suit from the photographs. Not the same suit, a different one, but the same quality, the same intention. He walked into the PICU waiting area with the specific ease of a man who has not yet understood that the landscape has changed. He saw me. He walked toward me. Nadia, he said. I'm sorry I didn't answer earlier, I was. Sit down, Warren, I said. Something in my voice made him sit. I was not angry. I want to be clear about this, because I think the absence of anger is the most important detail in this scene. I was not performing calm, and I was not suppressing something. I had moved through the anger somewhere between the floor of the corridor and Constance's briefcase, and what I was now was something quieter and more final than anger. I know about the party, I said. I know about the transfers from the joint account. I know that the joint account had $412 in it when the hospital asked us for $5,000 for Imani's treatment. I know about Simone. I paused. I know all of it, Warren. I have known about Simone for 2 years. I didn't act because I was managing Imani and I was managing us and I was managing the specific exhaustion of being married to you. I'm not managing anymore. He looked at me. I have an attorney, I said. Her name is Constance Webb. She filed 3 motions this afternoon. The emergency motion for financial disclosure will require you to produce documentation of all accounts in your name within 48 hours. He opened his mouth. I'm not finished, I said. Imani needs you to be present in that room. She needs her father. Whatever is happening between us does not touch that room. Do you understand? He said, Nadia. Do you understand? I said, yes, he said. Good, I said. Go see your daughter. He went. I watched him walk through the door. Then I called Della and told her what had just happened. She said, how do you feel? I said, like I can breathe. The financial disclosure Warren was required to produce within 48 hours of Constance's motion revealed things that I had suspected and things I had not. The things I had suspected, the transfers from the joint account. They went back 3 years, totaling in full, not just the 90 days I had seen, $217,000. Not to a business account. To a personal account in Simone Adair's name. $217,000. Over 3 years. From our marital assets. The things I had not suspected. A second property. Warren had purchased, 18 months ago, a condominium unit in a development outside our immediate area. The unit was listed in a holding company name, a company I had not known existed, registered in a state we did not live in. The purchase price was $340,000. A condominium. For Simone. Constance presented these findings to me in the hospital family consultation room on Thursday afternoon with the specific measured quality of a woman who has learned to deliver information like this without dramatizing it, because the information is dramatic enough. I sat with the numbers. The total, I said, between the transfers and the property. $557,000, Constance said. Over 3 years. From various accounts, some joint, some business accounts that have marital asset implications given the company was formed during the marriage. I thought about the $5,000. The stone in my chest that Tuesday morning. $5,000 for Imani's treatment from a man who had spent $557,000 building a life for another woman. He had the money, I said. He had the money, Constance said. He let me believe we didn't have $5,000. Yes, she said. I looked at the window. At the door. At my own hands. What does this mean for the case? I said. It means, Constance said, that the financial abuse claim is now fully documented. It means that the emergency support motion will be strengthened significantly. And it means that Warren's negotiating position is considerably weaker than he believed it was when he walked into this hospital. Good, I said. And I meant it with every cell in my body. I want to tell you about my daughter because she is the center of everything I have told you, and I have not yet told you enough about her. Imani Renee Cole was 7 years old, and she had her father's forehead and my eyes and a specific laugh that started in her chest before it reached her face. She had been in first grade, and she had recently declared that she wanted to be a marine biologist, which I had said was a wonderful plan, and which she had then researched with the thoroughness of a 7-year-old who finds a new thing and gives it everything. She had been in the crosswalk at 3:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. The driver of the car had run a red light. The impact had been significant. She had been on the ventilator for 11 days when Warren arrived at the hospital. On day 14, 3 days after my conversation with Constance and 2 days after the financial disclosure, Imani's physician, a careful woman named Dr. Anaya Osei, came to speak with me in the morning. She said, "There is meaningful improvement in the indicators we have been watching." I sat very still. What does that mean? I said. It means, Dr. Osei said, carefully, with the specific careful warmth of a physician who has given this kind of news before and understands what it weighs, that we are cautiously encouraged. It means we will be beginning the process of assessing ventilator reduction over the next several days. I called Della from the family consultation room. I did not speak for a moment. Nadia, Della said. What happened? She's getting better, I said. Della did not speak either for a moment. Then she said, of course she is. She has you. I sat in that room for a long time after the call. I thought about the crosswalk and the ventilator and the $5,000 and the $557,000 and Warren's new suit and the rooftop balloons. I thought about Della on the floor of the corridor, the card in her hand. I thought about Constance's briefcase. I thought about Imani's laugh starting in her chest. Get better, I said. To the door, to the room, to the machines on the other side of the wall. I have work to do out here, and I need you to get better. The legal process moved with the specific efficiency of a case that is thoroughly documented and whose facts are not in meaningful dispute. Warren's attorney, a man named Prescott who had a reputation for negotiating favorable settlements for wealthy husbands and who apparently had not been fully briefed on the documentation Constance possessed, adjusted his position 3 times in 6 weeks. The first adjustment came when Constance presented the full transfer record, $217,000, 3 years, Simone Adair's account. Prescott had been operating under the assumption that Warren had adequately concealed these transfers. He had not adequately concealed them from an account I legally had access to. The second adjustment came when Constance introduced the condominium, the holding company, the purchase, the $340,000. Prescott asked for a week. Constance gave him 3 days. The third adjustment came when Constance raised the question of the medical funding gap, $5,000, documented, requested while the joint account held $412, while Warren was spending $150,000 on a party. In family court terms, this established a pattern of deliberate financial deprivation of a dependent spouse during a family medical emergency. Constance described this to Prescott in terms that required no elaboration. The settlement that resulted was not what Warren had envisioned when he decided not to answer his phone at 10:47 a.m. on a Tuesday. The marital home, in both names, mortgage primarily funded by the joint account that Warren had been systematically depleting, stayed with me and Imani. A substantial monthly support amount that reflected Imani's medical needs and ongoing care. A lump sum representing the documented financial depletion of marital assets. The business interest, valuated at the time of separation. Warren signed on a Friday afternoon. I was at the hospital when Constance called. Imani had been off the ventilator for 3 days. She was breathing on her own. She had asked me that morning when she could go home. Soon, I had told her. Very soon. The settlement is done, Constance said. Are you ready for what comes next? Yes, I said. I've been ready for a while. Here is how it ends. Not with triumph exactly. Triumph is too small and too clean a word for what this was. With something more accurate. With the honest account of what was built from the floor of a hospital corridor. Imani came home 6 weeks after the accident. She walked through the front door of our home on a Saturday morning, and she looked at everything the way you look at familiar things after you have been away from them, with the specific attention of someone who understands that familiar things are not guaranteed. She walked to her room. She looked at her books and her drawings, and the marine biology poster she had put on her wall. Then she looked at me. Mom, she said. Are you okay? She was 7 years old, and she had been on a ventilator, and she was asking if I was okay. Yes, I said. I'm okay. Where's Daddy? She said. Daddy has his own place now, I said. You'll see him on the schedule we worked out. He loves you. She nodded. Children are more resilient than we give them credit for and more perceptive than we are comfortable with. She nodded with the specific acceptance of a 7-year-old who understands that the world has changed and is locating herself within the new version. I returned to nursing, not part-time, full-time, the career I had reduced when Imani was born and had not returned to. My nurse manager, a steady woman named Gloria who had sent a card every week Imani was in the hospital, welcomed me back with the warmth of someone who had been waiting. Della and I have dinner every Sunday. She does not say I told you so. She brings food and we talk about everything except Warren, because Warren is not relevant to any conversation we have anymore. Constance sent flowers when the settlement finalized. The card said, "You did this." Every piece of it. I kept the card. Warren and Simone, I hear things occasionally through the specific grapevine that these things travel through, and I receive them with the specific blankness of someone for whom the information is no longer relevant. I am 38 years old. I was on the floor of a hospital corridor when Della handed me her phone, and I understood what had been done while I was sitting beside my daughter's hospital bed. I made one call. And then another. And then another. That is all it took to end everything that needed ending and begin everything that needed beginning. Moral: the woman who has been made to feel she has nothing discovers, when she finally looks, that she has had everything she needed all along, and that the person who told her otherwise was the only thing standing between her and it. The end. If you made it to the end of this story, thank you for watching. I hope it stayed with you and gave you something to think about. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to subscribe and be part of the journey. There's so much more story still to come.